Well, let's cross now to our correspondents who are on the ground in Libya. Paula Slier in Tripoli, Igor Piskunov in Benghazi. Paula, to you first. We're hearing reports of new fighting not far from the capital where you are. What's been happening overnight as far as you can tell?
Well, the word bloodshed is increasingly being used to describe the situation in the last rebel-held city in the west of this country, the city of Misrata. Now, according to doctors on the scene, they say that one person was killed and several people were wounded in the early hours of Sunday morning when the government forces renewed shelling on a building in the city. Now, we understand from the doctors that until a few days ago, there were a number of civilians being housed inside that building. They had been injured in recent clashes between pro- and anti-Gaddafi forces, but fortunately, they had been evacuated before this shelling began. We are also hearing from doctors that in the last week alone, 160 people have been killed in Misrata itself from these battles. Now, as foreign press, it's almost impossible for us to independently verify this information because since the start of these clashes more than a month ago, we've been prevented from actually reaching Misrata. But we are being told by doctors that in a month of fighting, between 600 and 1,000 civilians have been killed in the city. Now, this is the third largest city here in Libya. It's about 200 kilometers to the east of Tripoli. It was also mentioned before, when you'll remember the rebels were making their advance to the city of Sirte. And at the time, they were playing with a strategy of actually bypassing Sirte and then advancing towards Misrata, from where they said they would renew their forces and then march onto Tripoli. Certainly, the rebels have been in control there for more than a month now. But what we are seeing increasingly is that the government troops are intensifying their shelling, and more it looks likely that the city will fall to the hands of Gaddafi's men.
OK, well, let's get something from Igor Piskunov now. You're in the second largest city, I should say, Benghazi. What's the morale like among the rebels following the recent coalition attack that killed 13 of their supporters?
Well, the general feeling here in the rebel stronghold is confusion, lots of confusion around that incident, because according to some reports, this attack by NATO planes on the rebels, reported attack of NATO planes on the rebels, was caused and triggered by Gaddafi troops who sneaked in among the rebels and opened fire at the planes. But other reports suggest that the rebels were celebrating and began shooting into the air, thus confusing the pilots and also triggering them to react back. But I can tell you that judging by the poor level of both organization and training of the rebel fighters, both versions are possible, because the rebels have been seen arguing and even fighting among themselves out there on the front. Many are teenagers who don't have any experience in combat, and there is even speculation and lots of rumors that Egypt and the United States may be secretly training the rebels out there on the front, and also rumors that CIA secret agents may be operating there as well, trying to organize the rebels, since when it comes to Gaddafi's forces, they're much better trained, they're much better equipped, and apparently there's much more of them. According to some figures, the ratio of the forces at the moment is around 1 to 10, meaning 1 rebel fighter against 10 Gaddafi soldiers. So the general understanding here in Benghazi is that the only way the rebels could be successful is with this air support from NATO.
So certainly a lot of confusion. Paula, the fighting in Libya seems to have come to a stalemate. Now, clearly Gaddafi is not just going to give up. What are the coalition forces planning to do about that?
Well, ever since the United States handed over command of the military operations here in Libya to NATO, the US has been decreasing the number of combat missions it carries out here. We are now hearing from top American military officials that they're also going to begin withdrawing their fighter jets, their submarines and their missile ships. Now, this does come against the background of a stalemate in terms of fighting on the ground between those pro- and anti-Gaddafi forces around the city of Brega in the east of the country. It also also comes against the backdrop of increasing criticism from within the American President Barack Obama's own administration over questions in terms of the representation and the capability of those opposition fighters. What we're also understanding, though, in terms of the reaction here on the ground, is that the rebel fighters are increasingly concerned, as NATO takes over command of this operation, that there will need to be greater consensus from your 28-member coalition for some kind of robust action on the ground. And that action perhaps would have been much more quickly authorized when the United States was in charge. As far as the Tripoli government goes, though, they continue to call this a crusader war. They say that these actions are illegal and immoral, and they are now voicing more and more concerns that in the future there will be the supplying of weapons to these rebel fighters. This will soon be followed by training and ultimately end in the deployment of foot soldiers.
OK, Paula Slier in Tripoli and Igor Piskunov in the rebel stronghold of Benghazi. Thank you both for that.